The restaurant was one of the most luxurious spots in the city, a place where the wealthy and powerful gathered to enjoy fine dining and discreet conversations. Among its regular patrons was Richard Cavendish, a billionaire whose reputation preceded him. Known for his ruthlessness in business and arrogance in public, Richard was the kind of man who could silence an entire room simply by walking in. People didn't just respect him, they feared him. On this particular evening, Richard arrived in his usual manner, a chauffeur-driven black limousine pulling up to the private entrance. The staff tensed the moment they saw him step out. He was impeccably dressed, wearing a tailored navy suit, his silver cufflinks glinting under the warm lights. The maitre d', a tall man with a nervous smile, rushed to greet him, bowing slightly as he opened the door. "Mr. Cavendish, your usual table is ready," the maitre d' said in a trembling voice. Richard didn't acknowledge him. Without a word, he strode past, his expensive shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. The other diners glanced up briefly, then quickly looked away, not wanting to draw his attention. Everyone knew that Richard's temper was as sharp as a blade, and his insults could cut just as deep. As Richard took his seat, the waitstaff scrambled to serve him, terrified of making a mistake. But tonight, there was a new waitress on shift, Emma. She was young, probably in her mid-20s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. Emma wasn't used to dealing with billionaires or celebrities. She had taken the job to support her sick mother and pay for her younger brother's education. She had heard the whispers about Richard Cavendish, but she didn't care much for gossip. In her mind, every customer deserved to be treated with respect, and she expected the same in return. Emma approached the table with a polite smile. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to start with some wine?" Richard looked up, his eyes cold and calculating. Instead of answering, he sneered. "Do you even know what wine pairs with a filet mignon, or are you just here to smile and look pretty?" The comment stung, but Emma kept her composure. "I do know, sir," she replied evenly. "May I recommend the Chateau Margaux 2015? It's one of our finest selections." Richard raised an eyebrow, slightly impressed but unwilling to show it. "Fine. Bring me that. And don't keep me waiting." Emma nodded and went to fetch the wine. As she walked away, she overheard some of the other waiters whispering nervously. One of them said, "She's going to regret talking back to him." Nobody challenges Cavendish. Dinner service continued, and Richard's behavior only grew worse. He barked orders, insulted the chef's cooking, and openly berated a busboy for accidentally dropping a spoon near his table. The atmosphere in the restaurant grew tense, with staff scurrying like frightened mice to avoid his wrath. Emma, however, continued to serve him with calm professionalism, refusing to let his attitude break her spirit. When she brought his main course, Richard pushed the plate away without even tasting it. "This is overcooked," he snapped. "Do you people even know what medium rare means?" Emma glanced at the steak. It was perfectly cooked. She took a deep breath, then looked him directly in the eye. "Sir, I assure you it's prepared exactly to your specifications. If you'd like, I can bring another one, but I believe this one is excellent." The restaurant went silent. No one, not the maitre d', not the head chef, not even Richard's own business associates, had ever dared to contradict him. Richard leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Yes," Emma said calmly. "You're a customer. And my job is to serve you good food, not to let you insult my team or humiliate people just because you can." Gasps echoed around the room. A couple at the next table quickly looked away, afraid to be caught staring. Even Richard seemed momentarily stunned by her boldness. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that no one had heard in years. "You've got guts," he said finally. "Most people cower when I raise my voice. You stood your ground." Emma didn't smile. "With all due respect, sir, fear isn't the same as respect. You can buy a lot of things, but you can't buy decency." Richard's expression shifted, the amusement fading from his eyes. For a moment, he seemed almost human. Then he gestured for her to sit down. "Tell me your name," he demanded. "Emma," she replied, hesitating before taking the seat across from him. "Emma," he repeated slowly, as if testing the sound of it. "You remind me of someone I used to know a long time ago." Someone who wasn't afraid to call me out when I was being difficult. Emma tilted her head. What happened to them? They left, Richard said simply, his voice quieter now. Because I drove them away. For the first time, Emma saw a flicker of vulnerability behind the billionaire's icy exterior. She realized that beneath his arrogance and cruelty was a lonely man who had built walls so high that no one dared to climb them. Richard sighed and pushed the plate back toward her. I'll eat it. And I'll leave a tip so generous your manager will think you robbed me. Emma smiled faintly. That's not necessary, sir. Just treat people with kindness. That's worth more than money. Later that night, as Richard left the restaurant, he paused at the door and looked back at Emma. For a brief moment, the great Richard Cavendish looked like any other man. Tired, regretful, and maybe even a little hopeful. From that day on, whenever he came to the restaurant, he was different. Polite, even considerate. And while no one ever knew exactly what Emma had said to him, the staff began to whisper about the night a fearless waitress changed a billionaire's heart with nothing more than courage and honesty. Sometimes, the bravest act isn't a grand gesture or a dramatic showdown. Sometimes, it's simply standing your ground and speaking the truth, even when the whole world tells you to stay silent.